Hello artists, welcome to your advanced painting demo. Just wanted to kind of talk about setup and some of the steps you've already done. So we've already carefully sketched out from our reference image basic info that we know we're going to need on the canvas. You can of course keep some of these templates, rulers, other things handy to redraw or define a little more crisply anything that gets lost as you're painting. So keep those handy or come back to that step as you need to. And then I like to make sure that I have some paper down on the desk, especially if I'm painting out the edges or painting a large area. You always want your reference close by. You want a few different brushes. And then for mixing your paint colors, you could grab a couple of palette knives, or you can also use popsicle sticks. So whichever kind of works for you. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. Just please make sure to clean the plastic palette knives if that is what you grab. You also want a water container handy and possibly some paper towel to rest your brushes on. It's not great to keep brushes sitting in the water container like this. What that does is it makes it really hard on the glue right here from the ferrule to the handle, and it just kind of seeps up in here and we start to lose the bristles in the brushes. So see, exhibit A. We want to keep things damp but not too wet, so rinse and then you could lay them down on paper towel nearby. I'm right-handed, so I tend to set up my palette and my brushes and my water over to the right. That way I'm not reaching as I go to get things when I work. So today's demo is a review for many of us. I'm gonna kind of cover these 6 things. First of all, what it is like working with the heavy-bodied acrylics. So I'll just dive in with that. So you're gonna notice as you build your palette, I'll move mine a bit closer just for a moment, the paint comes out quite a bit thicker. So this is an advantage because it has really good coverage compared to the liquid acrylics. It gives nice richness, but we never want to use them at total full strength. So there's a variety of different thinners, gloss and matte gel mediums. I always choose the colors I need, make sure I have a bit of white, and then I always just put a little bit of the clear over top of each. So I know that can be hard to see, but just to kind of thin that out. And again, I'm gonna then come, as I work with the color, use my palette knife or my popsicle stick to incorporate it, or use my brush simply to incorporate that. So again, don't keep these at total full strength. I always like to kind of thin them out slightly, just makes it easier to work with these heavy bodied acrylics. They're also quite a bit more expensive. So that's another way that we can stretch our supplies and really make things easy on us. One last note about the heavy bodied, looks can be deceiving. So there's colors on the outside of a lot of these tubes, but make sure to really read the name. So here I have a phthalo blue, which looked almost identical to the metallic blue. So, I mean, if I didn't want metallic, and hopefully, you know, sometimes taking the lid off, pressing or squeezing a bit, you can sort of see that difference. So here I know I'm gonna need a bit of a deeper blue, and I'll try to decide between these. I might actually just put both over here on the palette just to kind of see. There's my metallic. Right next to, there's the phthalo blue. So if in doubt, just take the smallest little bit of it and kind of spread that out. You know, you can take a really good look here and sort of see that those are quite different, those blue tones. All right, so one of the best tools in terms of keeping your paintings clean and crisp is using the painter's green tape. So I'm gonna prep mine in a couple of areas. I already did a tape line here, but I painted pretty quickly and heavily, so there was a bit of bleed through. So I'm just gonna kind of fix that up down here, working the other way. And I'll show you some tips and tricks to sort of avoid the dreaded bleed through. First of all, you really wanna press that tape down. Okay, make sure that the color is completely dry if you are putting it on top of a color. I'm gonna also define this edge here of this building. So any straight edges, I really love to tape. You can also tape on a curve, and I can show that sort of quickly or partially here. It just sort of involves ripping shorter pieces, but when you're ripping, be aware, always use the manufacturer's edge. Don't use your torn edge if you want that clean, crisp line. So you can, you know, do some small little pieces and sort of lay them over one another, and it can start to give you curves or circles. Personally, for me, I prefer to sort of freehand that. But again, it might be useful, right, in some of your text or your letters. So here at the top of my letters or at the bottom, I might just tape things off or in between them, however the case may be. Okay, here, I'll just get those little two right here. All right, so taping, super useful. And then when you go to paint, so if I was working down here with taping sort of into this ground area, I've got my nice soft yellows here, okay? And I'm gonna just start to pull. It's like you can go along the tape and go right over the tape a little bit, but also if you paint kind of the opposite direction. So my tape was running horizontally. Here I am painting vertically. So that can kind of be really helpful sometimes as I just start to lay down this color. If this color is not quite flowing on the way I want it to, okay, I'm gonna go ahead, grab a brush that's not broken, get a little more water to the canvas, can certainly help it flow. See how that's going a bit better for me? And I'm actually gonna go to quite a large brush, these household brushes, again, making sure that I get it damp and working into that color, okay? So taping is quite wonderful in terms of just protecting something, especially if it's in a large area. You may want to do a couple of coats. The other tip is always allow whatever you've done to dry completely before peeling the tape away. So I'm going to leave this tape in place as I continue on to another part of the demo here. Okay, the next thing I'm sort of leading into is wet blending. So there's two different ways you can explore blending, really important for that look of Art Deco. I've got a lot of thinner going and a lot of water right now, and that is by design. I'm wanting my paint to be thin, and I actually put this large brush, if you can see over here, into two different colors. I wanted to bring that top one as more of a neutral yellow to like a warmer yellow down at the bottom. So if you load up your brush and leave it as a dirty brush, as long as the two colors are wet, they are going to blend. Just to kind of emphasize this a bit more, I'm going to come back in now with even some white near that horizon, just white paint directly on top of the Naples yellow or the unbleached titanium color. And you can see how, okay, it's allowing me to just pull that color, blending it into the other. So this only works if everything you're using is wet at the same time. Can do the same here if I wanted to bring in a bit of this deeper sandy tone, and I can come in at the bottom with that. There's still a bit of white on my brush, so I'm going to rinse it out. Come back in with that deeper tone. So you can do this, you know, I'm going side to side. I might let this dry, repeat my blend, especially if I get any weird lines that I'm not happy with. But the wet blending, the basic trick, is that you need all of your colors mixed in advance, right, ready to go, so that you can work rather quickly and you can kind of work over top of one another with a dirty brush. Excuse me, artists. So this takes a little bit of practice and just like trial and error, because acrylics dry very quickly, and that can be a frustrating thing or that can be a really great thing. Okay, by contrast, you can try something called dry blending. So if I'm dry blending, I actually might recommend using some of these sponge brushes to do this job. And let's say I wanted to come into my sky a little bit here. Okay, just gonna look back at the reference where there's this really sort of soft blend done by machine, like by printing machines, in a really artificial way. So I can take a little bit of the similar sky color I had mixed, and where I know it's gonna start to lighten, and just come in very thinly. I don't know if you could see, I sort of tapped a bit of the paint onto the sponge brush and then tapped it off to the side. And this will let me slowly build. I can build lighter colors, so I'm doing that here. Okay. And the sponge just really helps avoid any brush marks. You can use various sizes. You can go in a variety of directions and just kind of keep buffing it out really, really thinly until you kind of get that seamless little blend. I'm actually going to incorporate a bit of blue here, just tapping it off so you can see how even differing colors, when applied with the dry blending sponge brush, can be satisfying. So this is not recommended right on top of your canvas. I would recommend, like the white gesso color, I would recommend paint on top of paint, okay? So I'm just kind of working with that. I'm gonna take a clean dry brush now to kind of give it a final buffing or a smoothing. So you can see how I'm able to create, right, those different tones. I'm gonna come back with the light color and I can soften it up. I might want kind of a cloud shape happening here, but I can still make it feel like that perfect, almost machine printed postery blend by just experimenting a little bit, okay, with these sponge brushes. So go right over large areas. It dries really quickly when you're doing dry blending, which is a nice advantage because you can kind of just keep building, layering, going back and forth between the colors till you're happy kind of with how it looks. And then anything that's spotty or patchy, you know, you can change. These sponge brushes, you want to clean them the exact same way as all of your regular brushes, just soap and water at the back sink. Okay, modeling paste. So modeling paste is a great way to add the opposite of what I was just doing here, this really thin, these thin textures. You might want thick textures. So this is our modeling paste container. You could take the whole lid right off, but it does have a flip top lid. Something that I like to do is incorporate it into the color. So I'm just gonna squeeze a little bit out. Oh, if it will let me. Sometimes just getting the whole lid off is a bit easier. There we go. So it's kind of this gray color. All right, we're gonna try to keep that from drying out. I have the gray color of the modeling paste here. I'm gonna use a palette knife and I'm gonna tone that to a color that I sort of wanna use. So I'm wanting to maybe create my sun or my sky circle here with some of this modeling paste. So this is really gonna thicken those paints even more than they already are. You can apply the modeling paste as a gray layer and then just leave it to dry. I personally just prefer to tone it and kind of mix it into the color that I want first. So then using that same palette knife initially, I like to bring it over and apply. So you can see how you could get some real painterly thick textures here if that was a style that you were going for. I'm now going to switch to a brush that's going to give me a little more control to come in, get that outer shape traced out, and then kind of smooth over the top of it. So you can apply this quite thick. I would almost recommend middle of the road here because it does take a little while to dry, but it can be a nice way to just bring a little bit of definition, physical texture to your work. Could be fun to use perhaps in your lettering, you know, kind of taking bubble lettering to the next level. Sorry about that, artists. Okay, but you get the idea. So the modeling paste, okay, it is gonna pick up whatever width of brush that you are using. So if you didn't want all of this texture, one solution is to come, you might have to clean up the edges later, but you can run something more flat and mechanical like this palette knife here to kind of smooth that out. And then if it still is wet, again, you can just come, pick it up, excuse me, wipe it away, all that kind of stuff, right? Touch up wherever you don't want that color. Okay, so the modeling paste is really interesting in terms of just physical textures and depth. One last one that's worth reviewing is glazing. So glazing, I like to, again, use a lot of this thinner and just a little bit of the liquid. So I'm gonna, let's see, show a little bit of deep, deep blue here in glazing, okay? I have water going on, I have a lot of this thinner going on, and if in the bottom, everything that you've done before is still going to show. It's just going to give you sort of a really translucent, transparent layer over top. So my intent here is not to cover anything, but rather just building sort of a soft blue tone at the bottom. So you can see how this glazing provides a really similar effect to the wet blending and dry blending. You can use it just to kind of tone things, make them warmer, make them cooler, and all that kind of stuff. My last bit of advice, and it's not any of those 6 techniques, is simply this. Take good care of your brushes. You can grab a set, store them in your bins today. That way you're responsible for what you're doing. Always use the right size brush for the job. So if I was coming up here into some letters, right? I want to use a brush that gives me sort of the thickness that I'm after. Not too big, not too small, but something that kind of minimizes, right, the amount of brush strokes that I need to do. So that is the first tip. Have small ones, have large ones. Some might be square shaped, some might be more round shaped, but using the right size tool for the job. Sometimes I see people getting into a big area like this building here, they're still using this brush. Don't do that. That's a great way to waste a lot of time, kind of drive yourself crazy. Switch to something larger here. Okay, now if I'm gonna start building in where I want this building to be, switch to larger brushes for the job and kind of paint in the direction of the item you're working on. Always working in layers from the back to the front, adding more and more little details as we build this up. It's a fun process, and if you have any questions, I'm here to help you, artists. So have fun with your new set of tricks and tips with advanced painting.